time. Once again, we are live. We are ready to go here at Awesemo.com. PGA DFS live before lock. John Deere Classic. Can't even say that without kind of laughing. But you know what? That's all right. We're still here to make some money. We're here to discuss the slate at hand. I am Ben Rasa. That is Eric Lindquist, fresh off a baseball show. Sir, how are you doing?
Doing well. I was getting made fun of as a host, so it's nice to be on the other side of this. Good to be an analyst. No, I'm not going to pull up my sob story. What I am excited about is the greatest golf tournament in the history of the PGA Tour, and that is the John Deere Classic, because it is the one golf course on tour I've probably played more than any other.
Really? That is actually pretty interesting. Did not know that, and we're going to talk about TPC Deer Run. This is a ridiculous field. We're going to get into it, but you know what? Our chat, they know right off the bat. This is what I was going to say. Super Monkey 22 said it. Build up the bankroll for next week. Next week's a major. There's nothing wrong with trying to get an edge in this week and carrying it over to the European Tour next week when we get the British Open. We're going to focus on that next week. What we're going to focus on right now, our friends at Monkey Knife Fight, who are sponsoring the show. If you do not know, they're player prop-based contests, easy to play, not a huge time commitment. Go over there, and it's PGA, NBA, UFC, esports. The Euros are winding down, but they have content for all these things. monkeyknifefight.com. Choose your games, your stakes, your buy-in level. And when you get over there, use the promo code Awesemo. You will get an instant first match deposit bonus up to $100. No reason not to sign up and make some extra money. So on that note, when we look at what we've got here, we're going to dive into it because we've got a slightly shorter show today, and that's okay because it's the John Deere. Waves, weather, withdraws. I don't see a ton to talk about right off the bat. I think we're in the clear. What say you?
I don't. And I also talk about how on these easier golf courses, it really just comes down to putting. So I'm not too worried about some slight wind here or there that might skew one way or another. It's going to be a birdie fest.
That is last week, we talked about at the Rocket Mortgage, it was going to be a birdie fest, and it was, but it didn't play nearly as easy as I thought, to be honest. This one is really, I think, going to get, even with the bad field, the abilities, it's so generous off the tee. You get 3 par 5s. These guys are just going to take this course apart. But I do want to just, again, let's just go to the course. Let's go to TPC Deer Run. I'm going to hand you the mic right now. So tell me your thoughts. I mean, is there a skill set you think stands out, or is it really, at the end of the day, you need to get on these greens and just make these putts?
Yeah, the last hole of each side, number 9 and number 18, are definitely by far your most difficult golf holes. Number 9, over 500-yard par 4. Number 18, you've got water short left. We've seen the bunker shot a million times from Jordan Spieth. That is kind of an intimidating second shot if you don't completely bomb it there. There's some tree wooding over on the right. It's an interesting golf course. I don't think that there's a skill set per se that really sticks out. I think it's kind of an all-around player that can kind of go out here and win. I do not gauge much off the tee whatsoever. It's a lot of shorter clubs that you're hitting just about every single spot out here. I don't really see anything that I'm like specifically targeting more than normal. I want to be targeting guys who are in good form. I want to be targeting guys who make a bunch of birdies and they just play really well with their wedges. I think that that's another thing that I probably didn't focus on enough last week as much as I should have. In some spots, there were a couple guys. Strokes games approach. There's such a hit and miss gauge for it in a tournament like this because there's just a lot of room for error. You get on the greens. If you're making putts, it doesn't matter if it's 10 feet or 40 feet. There can be some disparity. I think I was maybe getting a little bit off from what I normally do there. A guy like Grillo obviously did not putt well. I don't even want to talk about him. Thank God he's not in the field. Let's move on.
No, he's not. Yeah, I think within that, I don't like to get drilled down too much because I think that's too noisy. But, strokes gained approach, not all shots are created equal. And you've got, some courses where they're forcing, 200 plus yards approaches. This to me is more, can you be really precise from say like 125 in? Can you dial it in? Can you give yourself real birdie looks? It's not just about hitting these greens and 2-putting. You're going to lose strokes to the field on most holes if you do that because these holes are very easy. Certainly the par 5s, you're going to need to either hit it into or get up and down and take advantage of that because streaks, bonuses, all the things we talked about last week are going to be in play, and I'd say even more so.
Yeah, and there's only 3 of them, I believe, on this golf course, right? You have number 2, number 10, and 17. So those are your 3 that you've got there, and it's just really coming down to par 4 scoring. You're going to have a lot of short clubs. None of these par 4s are that intimidating whatsoever outside of the aforementioned number 9 and number 18. So Yeah, just buckle up, get ready to enjoy those birdie streak bonuses because they are going to be hot and heavy.
It's where we're at. Listen, not every week is, a major. Not every week is filled. If you want to go, we got the Scottish Open with a lot of big names, but we have the cards that were dealt. And you know what? It does give you an opportunity to do some different things with your lineups, with your builds. And I do like that. And let's go to the top tier here. I want to get into these players. We've got Daniel Berger leading us off. We've got Brian Harman, Cam Davis, who won last week, Sungjae Im. Those are the big four, I guess you could call them. Berger, per our projections, looks like the highest owned, and I think that's warranted. What do you look at when you see the top of the board this week?
I mean, it's very different from last week. I mean, last week, my hot take ended up coming to fruition where the top four, I didn't want any of them. None of them finished in the top 10.
Great call by you.
Thank you.
About Bryson. That was one of the, I will say, hurt me. Decky, he got a raw deal, obviously. He like he would have made it, but very spot on by you to avoid the Bryson landmine. Yeah,
so the Bryson landmine could have really, I think knocked out 1/3 of the field before the tournament even started, really. So that was really useful. I think that can also, it goes one against the course history data, I suppose, but it's 1 year. If you overlook Bryson, as well as he played last summer, like he just played phenomenally well. And I'm just not trusting the putter the same way that I was last time around. I mean, looking at Daniel Berger this week, I mean, I still have interest in going to him. I think if you're talking about the class of the field, I mean, it's him, Brian Harman, but Daniel Berger's won more elite events. I think if you're talking about win equity, he's rightfully at the top of the board. I don't think that there's any question about that, but I don't know, 11-1, do I really want to be paying that? I mean, salary is very, very relative this week. Everybody's priced up all over the board, as they should be, because otherwise you just kind of have a pick 'em over the course of this week. You'd see some really condensed flocked ownership, but Daniel Berger's rightfully up there. Maybe that gets him a little bit less, but looking at our ownership projections for him right now, I'm not going to get to him as much as what I was anticipating early in the week when I thought that he'd come in much lower owned than 27%, just because of that 11-1 number. But that just tells you that it's not that hard to kind of pair him up with some people this week.
It's really not a difficult pull. That's I have a weird, you hit the nail on the head. Beginning of the week, I thought I'd get way over on Daniel Berger. Then I saw the ownership. I thought I'd probably come in under, but I still find myself being able to get over because I'm not like, oh man, the opportunity cost is so immense. There's so much value. There's so many interchangeable pricing in a weak field that I'm not really against it. I think naturally he's using this as a tune-up week, but he's been pretty solid. We just haven't seen a ton of them. So I think his combination of approach and putting will be fine. What do you make of the champ from last week, though? Cam Davis obviously breaks through. Is that just good for him? We'll leave him be? Or do you think you could maybe ride the heater when most people are going to jump right off?
Yeah, his ownership was lower in the week than I think we've got him right around 10% here right now. And I think that that's probably about appropriate for him. So most weeks, what happens is a guy wins and you have a lot of other options where it's like, yeah, they're a better quality of player. I mean, unless you're talking about John Rahm winning the US Open, where now he goes into Aberdeen and he's 6.5 to 1 or something like that this week over in Scotland. So whatever there, but like Daniel Berger, comparatively to like Cameron Davis, I mean, there's not that big of a chasm between the two like there would be on other weeks. So Cameron Davis is just fine. I feel pretty good about having a little bit there. Not really somebody that I'm like immediately jumping at the bit to roster, but I'm definitely going to have a little bit, probably more so than I have had of recent past champions or like the week after a guy wins a tournament during the course of this year.
I'm with you. So he naturally had some good strokes gain data last week because he won, gained across the board. The thing that I like is he's mirroring a similar layout. Like if he was going to a course where it was like, all right, now we're in a grinded out, really bogey avoidance. No, he needs to implement the same strategy that he used at Rocket Mortgage for the most part. I like that. I think it's much easier for him to ride the wave when he's in the same mindset. He's going for it. He's trying to score, leans on that. 10-1 is a fair price for him. I have no problem with that. So the way I'd order it, I think Berger's the safest. I don't mind Cam Davis. Obviously, Sungjae and Brian Harman are very good players, but to me, I'm kind of indifferent or somewhat against those plays.
Good. I'm happy that we're linked up on this. I feel like some weeks we're in sync and it's not very great. I mean, last week should have been a phenomenal week for me. I basically avoided all the landmines and it just seemed like famous Seamus just couldn't finish it quite good enough for us. And I was man, I have not pulled that hard for somebody, but getting a chalk Troy Merritt to go off was not useful.
Yeah, I mean, last week was fine for me. I had one really good team. Unfortunately, it was a 5-6 with Decky, and that hurts. But you know, that happens. It's not a huge deal. You move on, and I think we're seeing it pretty good. You know, a lot of the guys who are playing well are still in this field, and I do like that. And as we kind of go to the next range, with Russell Henley leading us off, I think a popular Russell Henley, him and Streelman make a lot of sense. They're going to lean on the approach game. They can score. I want your thoughts on them, of course, but then just to fill out the rest of the range, you've got Kevin Na, Norin Wise, Siwoo Kim, and Seamus making his appearance in the 9Ks. Good for you, man. What say you? Start at the top. Feel free to take us anywhere.
Well, I'll save Seamus for last because I think that's going to be a very fun talking point for everybody involved. Let's start with Russell Henley. I think 9,900 is about appropriate for him here. It's weird looking at strokes gained data for the course of this week because this is just going to be the easiest course that a lot of these guys play, including last week. And obviously he didn't play. He played at the Travelers. So he played in Connecticut, finished top 20, 13th at the US Open, both a little bit more difficult tracks. I mean, the Travelers didn't play as easy as it historically has in years past. The PGA did not play well. He had 4 basically just bombs, Memorial, PGA, Wells Fargo, Valspar leading into those. So it's nice to see some form kind of rounding up there. My big thing with him is the putter is such a hard thing to gauge because he is either going to go out and he is going to just go nuts. That 8.2 strokes gained putting at the Honda, 9 strokes gained over in Korea for the, what was that? It was for the CJ Cup. And so you've had some massive scores where he's gone out and just lit it up here. And I'm looking back and just trying to figure out like who's putting better. I don't really see a whole lot in that strokes gained putting data spot that I'm really looking at the last 7 weeks. He's been getting it a lot done tee to green, which is kind of strange, 6.9 and 5. And considering I'm weighting that a little bit less, I mean, that's the one thing that I feel pretty comfortable saying. I don't really care that much about your tee to green game this week. I'm looking at your strokes gained approach. Also been good in that regard. I mean, 6.9 strokes gained approach, specifically off the tee, excuse me. He hasn't been very good off the tee. Lost 2.6 strokes at the US Open. Most people are going to lose strokes at the US Open who aren't good off the tee in general. 2.4 at the Travelers is fine. For me, I think he could definitely go and light it up, but I'm not going to go crazy with him because he feels very volatile for me at 9,900.
Yeah, I mean, Henley's a difficult gauge. He does tend to gain strokes in bunches. Like even with his irons, like he'll have 6-8 strokes gained in a week. And then he's very quiet. I do like the form. I think he's got the right combination, which is approach and putting. You don't want to be horrendous off the tee, but these are very generous fairways. So if he can just be net neutral, lean on the approach, he can score. I think Streelman makes a lot of sense. If you're playing cash, I think you could start with Streelman and feel very, very comfortable. But I want to talk about the bottom of the range because Norin is playing very well. He's obviously taken a price up, but he gained in all 4 categories at Rocket Mortgage. He came in 4th. He's a good putter. He's gained in 5 of 6. Old school Norin, you would say, I like him, but he can't score enough in a birdie fest. This Alex Norin, he's top 20 on the tour in birdies or better percentage. He is a scorer now. He's transformed his game. I like Norin this week. I think he can hang in and certainly pay off that salary.
So if you looked at like a curve specifically starting at 9,900 from Henley, where I'm kind of a little bit lower on him, it just basically goes up in this entire range for me. I have more interest in Streelman than Henley, more interest in Na than Streelman, more interest in Norin than Na, more interest in Wise than probably any of them, skip Siwoo Kim, and then Seamus Power I'm just all in on. But I really like the call going to Alex Norin. Again, I'm going to give you all the credit. You're somebody who kind of saw some things in him leading into that week at the Byron Nelson. I thought 21 was he finished 21st, and that was about the worst result he could have put up that week. He was kind of playing very, very well. And I always talk about that narrative where you want to target guys who don't necessarily go bonkers in that final round, who at least get themselves into the mix. And it seems like he's a guy who finally, Rocket Mortgage, we finally saw that big 4th round from him. He shot 64, kind of put himself, interestingly enough, into the mix at 1,700 or at 17 under, 1,700. My God. Can you tell I'm going on back-to-back shows here at the moment, but just pointing out that at the AT&T, Byron Nelson, he shot 74 on Sunday, which on that golf course was just abysmal. And it kind of masked how well he was playing at that point in time. I like the upside that exists for him here. A guy who at his prime was one of the best putters on planet Earth. That's what he was known for coming out of the Euro Tour. I have a ton of interest in going to him this week.
Yeah, if you don't pay up for someone like Berger, you certainly could take 2 or 3. In the nines. I think Wise lost 5 strokes putting at Travelers. Tita Greeny's been fantastic. He can score. He's a good player. He was 9th at Memorial, 9th at Wells Fargo, top 20 at the PGA. I have no problem with him either. Let's get this. Let's get to 9K shame. I've never thought I would see that, but more the crazier thing is if that ever happened, I would think he'd be 1% owned. But he's going to be popular, and it's warranted. He is playing as good as anybody in this field right now. I know that's crazy, but it's true.
I had 65% of him last week. I'm going to have more this week. I'm
I'm
riding the heater. I'm riding it. I mean, we pulled him out of a hat, didn't we? Did we just pull him out of a hat a couple weeks ago?
I love Seamus. He just doesn't have status, and he's taking advantage of these starts. The game looks great right now. There's all systems go.
It's everything, and it's across the board. And again, off the tee doesn't really matter to me this week that much. Yeah. And that's the one thing that he lacks in. He is so flippin' good at everything else. He can spike the putter finally. We saw that at the Rocket Mortgage, 5.7 strokes gained putting. The Travelers, the Palmetto. The guy is going to hit so many wedges close here in this spot. I mean, it would be insane for me. I think that this is the spot where you kind of invest in the top 5, top 10 market along with this. If he's going to pop, it's going to pop very, very soon. And I want to be as invested as I possibly can across the board.
I mean, I'm with you. You're going to have more in terms of pure ownership. And if you want a better sense of that, check out our Premium Pro Plays. Great tool that you can get some insight in. I bet Seamus top 5 last week. That really hurt because I almost cashed that ticket at 23-1. He was right there. Just couldn't finish. But you know what? He's playing good golf. I like it. I see that. Before we move on to the 8K range, I want to get this question in from chat from the mini lawn. Doesn't feel optimal to leave 2 or 3K on the board, but is it with this kind of field? We get the question a lot. In golf, you definitely can leave money. I would say this, if you're leaving a couple thousand, can it work? Yes, definitely. But more likely than not, I think it's probably wise to upgrade somewhere. That's a pretty hefty amount. How would you approach something like that?
So this question, it's almost like I planted this. I did not, my hands up, not on the computer. I am not the mini lawn. So I love that they placed this in. I was actually going through data last week and then again this week. And I want to get it all put together before I bring this out on a show because I don't want to look stupid at this point in time. But I was very curious how many times a score of 20 under or better, excluding the Tournament of Champions, because I think that just brings a higher quality of player into it in Hawaii, and that generally goes super, super low. But the number of times that a tournament finishes at 20 under or better, that it has an optimal with more than $1,000 left on the table. And I'm going to say that it is a very, very high clip. Starting with 2 weeks ago, it was like 49,000. There was a couple 45,000s that were kind of thrown out there just because I think easier golf courses bring more players into play. That's just a strong belief that I've always had. So growing up in South Dakota, you have a ton of wind, and it always felt like when it was super windy out, that you had the best players go out and kind of impose their will on everybody. And it was always relative to what the field is. But when you make it comfortable, when you make trained professionals comfortable on a golf course, when you make it easy for everybody involved to hit the ball, to basically get away with your mistakes, to not have things blown in, you hit one bad shot and it turns into a 7 like in the US Open, where it kind of happens to everybody over the course of 72 holes. I just think these birdie fests come down to putting so much more than anything else. And when we talk about how high variance of an event putting is, like specifically, I know that I'm coming at this from a data angle as well as from being a golfer, but like when you're out there playing, you're not thinking about that. You're just trying to play. You're not worried about whatever, but like there's a specific thing when you look at the data where you just have to putt lights out in these kind of events. And I think that just brings more players into play than normal. So I love the idea of leaving 2,500 in play. If you're not going to be putting Berger into your lineups, there isn't that high opportunity cost that there would generally be at like even a Honda Classic or at like the Memorial.
No doubt about it. The opportunity cost is less. I still think, I would try to upgrade, but I do see what you're saying. That's a fascinating discussion. That's something I definitely want to continue on some shows because that's really useful data. And I think some good insight into kind of some of the roster constructions you can do in these type of tournaments. As we move down, let's do it. It's time, chat, First of all, it's time to hit the like button. Let's hit some likes. We're getting closer back to a true live before lock. We're in the afternoon. Now we're in the early evening. Who knows what we'll have next week? And next week is the last major of the year. Get inside the ropes. Just sign up for the week. $8.95 for our PGA weekly pass. No reason not to do that at minimum. But it's time for the Make the Cut segment. We're going to give you some golfers. Eric, you're going to tell me from 2 rounds, 4 rounds. Where are they going? Are they going to make this cut? We're going to start in the upper 8s. We've got Maverick McNeely, who's playing well. Troy Merritt, who's playing out of his mind, particularly with the putter. And Lucas Glover, who is in the mid 8K range this week.
I mean, what do we do with Lucas Glover?
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of like him, though.
I kind of like him too. And it doesn't make me feel good because what do we have to lean on in the last 3 weeks? Absolutely nothing. 37th of Memorial was fine. He was around the green. And I would say what's most shocking of all is that in the last 4 tournaments, the guy's been positive strokes gained putting. It's been with the approach. So I don't know who he is anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do with him this week yet. I've got a couple guys highlighted that it's just like, I'm going to ask Ben. This is number 1 that was on the list, was figuring out what to do with him because I'm definitely going to be invested in Maverick McNeely and Troy Merritt. I think Troy Merritt playing very well. Maverick McNeely, I've always said is kind of a stud, and I'm always going to be there every single week, especially in a weaker field.
So I do think there's one thing you can do with Glover if you don't want to go there in DFS. He's pretty juicy in the markets. He's upwards of 65-1 in the outright market. I think that's a decent number on a guy that, listen, this guy knows what he's doing. He's not playing at the height of his powers, but long term, the ball striking numbers are there. And the putting has been a welcome sight. He just hasn't paired it with anything useful. So I don't mind him. Maverick's my favorite of the bunch. Troy Merritt, along with a couple guys, Chad just pointed out, Pat Perez as well. They've been doing it all with the putter. Troy Merritt is putting out of his mind, and Maverick is notoriously a very good putter, but he's doing it off the tee right now. So I think that his game is kind of coming into form. If he can just lean, again, I don't think off the tee is super important, but it doesn't hurt to be just set up with wedges all day. I like him of the best of the 3. I think I'm going to be over on Maverick this week. He's the type of guy. Wouldn't surprise me if he's on the Cam Davis train and close to breaking through.
God, I love that. Okay, let's party.
Yeah. Moving down, because there's a lot of guys here. Hank Lebioda, another guy out of his mind right now, playing some fantastic golf. Zach Johnson is probably the most synonymous with this tournament. Loves it, plays it every year. Certainly a ridiculous history. And then a tough one for you, Doc Redman. Not even going to give a little monologue. It's just Doc Redman. What do you do with him?
Okay, so my tilt starts here because Hank Lebioda cost me a lot of money last week.
He was out of control.
And it's dumb. Like, I don't know what to do because, I have a spreadsheet that tells me don't play him because there's one thing to see spikes in weeks for putting, but it's another thing to see the spikes that we've seen the last 4 weeks, 2.8, 3.8, 5.8, 6.1 strokes game putting. It just keeps getting better and better, and I don't know what to do with it. Obviously, he's got an amazing short game. Also been gaining around the green in the last 4. Strokes gain approach 2.7 finally last week, so yeah, there's that's kind of matched up with it. But he is not this good of a ball striker. He's not capable, I don't think, of putting himself in these positions. And if that even flattens out to like 2 or 3, you see a 31st. And then you're bypassing a lot of the field. And, I'm just kind of hoping that he's another guy that just fails. I haven't been on him once. And so I don't really want to be investing in the lefty slapper here at this point in time. I just hope that putter cools down.
Kind of coming at it from the opposite angle, but we meet in the middle. I've been playing Lebioda as salary relief, and I'm very happy, of course, that I've been getting paid off. Now the margins are a lot thinner, and he's going to have to continue to lean on a putter that's been doing a lot of heavy lifting. I'm not saying I'm going to have 0%, but I have much more interest in other guys this week comparatively because he's not rounding out my lineups. He could be my second or third man in, and that's a different type of task. So for me, Zach Johnson is very safe. He's playing fine. We know he knows this course. Redman, you can always go there because he can score. I think he's probably a better showdown play. I don't even mind it, first round leader markets, things like that. I don't know if I want to invest in him in 72 holes though. I think there's pretty good miscut equity relative to the 8K range with him.
I like how you didn't even say Ryan Moore's name.
No, Ryan Moore, talk about, I don't need a spreadsheet for that one. Ryan Moore is on blacklist. I've tried this.
Wait. You can't say Zach Johnson course history and then not say Ryan Moore course history.
That's true.
That's extrapolating data.
Ryan Moore. Let's go to Ryan Moore here. You want
to talk Ryan Moore? Yeah, let's party. Time. Come on now. I don't have a ton of him, but I've got double the field.
Ryan Moore since Yeah, here, I'm trying to frame this in a funny way. I don't have anything clever, so I'm just going to say his stats now. He's got no top 25s since July 26th of 2020. He hasn't done anything this year. His best finish was 26th. In recent weeks, he has a pair of 54th place finishes and a missed cut at the Byron Nelson. He's done absolutely nothing with the putter. He's done absolutely nothing with the irons. His off the tee game, ironically, is okay. The only thing that you can bank on is that Ryan Moore comes here and he just gets right because he's a former winner and he absolutely destroys this course long term.
That's why I played Kevin Kistner last week. I think that worked out actually pretty well. And there's certain golf courses where guys are just going to click. And I think what I saw that was so exciting was that Kevin Kistner last week was not going to see a ton, like he wasn't going to get to like 20% owned or anything. And last year we basically saw the exact same thing where he had no form coming into it and something just clicked. The exact same thing kind of happens with Ryan Moore. He's basically my Kevin Kistner play of the week, if you want to dub him as that. I've got double the field. I'm not getting crazy with him. I had way more Kistner last week than what I'm going to have of Ryan Moore, but I just think you can't just throw out tons of course history at this spot. Also, it plays directly into everything that he's traditionally good at the height of his powers. Stroke gains approach, and then find a way to get the ball in the hole. Like that's what he's going to do. I don't like seeing the around the green stats, but he's never been a guy who's going to gain a ton off the tee. Of last 3 weeks, he hasn't been that good. He's had a couple spikes weeks here and there with strokes gain total, but strokes gain tee to green. But I think that he's going to kind of get right this week, and I like being over the field today.
To me, it's just a question of, is he the same golfer? Because everything you just said is true. This fits his game. He's come here before. I just don't know if he has any game right now. That injury really seemed to do a number. I'm not sure that he's worked. Not that he hasn't worked back. He just hasn't had much form since returning. But you know what? You're right about Kisner. I will say Kisner 2 weeks ago flashed and then he sustained a little bit. Okay. Ryan Moore has given you absolutely nothing, but he is coming to the one place that could be the get right spot. So I see it. As we work down, though, this is a pretty juicy range. You've got Doug Gim at flat 8, Kyle Stanley at 7,900. One of the few guys to me that seems almost underpriced. Your boy, Bo Hostler, who is really playing good golf, and Pat Perez, all in this upper 7K range. How do you order these guys?
I go Hostler, Stanley. I don't care about the rest that much. I think is probably the right way of putting it. I love Kyle Stanley this week. A guy that I didn't really expect to be on, but that's kind of what happens when you start doing your research and you go through the motions, and he's actually been pretty good. I like getting to Kyle Stanley in the spot. This also kind of feels like the golf course that would kind of fit him. I did not look at what his past history at this tournament was. More of just seeing him start to trend up, putting atrociously, but that's kind of what Kyle Stanley does. He's going to hit the ball like an absolute Greek god. And I think that this is a spot where the greens are not that pronounced. There's not a lot of undulation. It seems like a place where I think a bad putter can go out and go nuts.
Kyle Stanley has just been absolutely fantastic tee to green. He has gained off the tee in 8 straight. He's gained in the approach game 5 straight. He has lost 5 straight with putting. But even if he does that, it's not like he's not making cuts. He's made 6 straight weekends. And at 7,900, it might not be perfect, but he's not killing you. So to me, Kyle Stanley is one of the more solid plays. It's going to be popular, especially I think in single entry and whatnot. But I really like it. Bo Hostler, I have no problem with. Pat Perez is someone that I'm on a macro buy. And when I say that, I mean that I played Pat Perez at the Travelers. I really liked him there. I held on. I played him at the Rocket Mortgage. He responded. He also gained 8 strokes putting. That will really help. I'm just going to keep playing him. I think he's in a good little groove here, and that's where I'm at. So it's a pretty powerful range, and a lot of my lineups will have 2 or 3 guys from this range, but I want to add a couple more guys in for you. Mm-hmm. We've talked about Ryan Moore. We've talked about Zach Johnson. What do you think of Steve Stricker, who is 7,700 and another guy at this course?
Do we want to talk about my tilt part 2? Because this is my tilt part 2.
Go ahead.
I was about to lock him in Connecticut, like flat out lock him in. Like we were going to get on the show. That was going to be my hot take. And I was going to just come in guns blazing.
That would have been too
hot. I was going to be like, my God, have you seen how good a form Steve Stricker is in? And this golf course here in Connecticut, it was perfect for him. So what does he do? He withdraws and he goes and dominates a senior tour event. Now he's 20% owned. I'm so pissed. I'm so upset about it. But that being said, I'm going to have 100% Steve Stricker this week. So there's that. I'm going to lock button Steve Stricker. I understand he's 50 plus years old. I understand that this is crazy. You want to talk about somebody, you want to get weird about something, I'll get weird about something. Steve Stricker is going to go out and top 5 this golf tournament, and there's no way around it. There's just none. This is his golf course. He owns this place. He's coming in off of a 44th at the PGA, 13th at the Honda, coming off of a senior tour event where he just flat out win and won, 4th at the Waste Management. I mean, there are a number of events where he's just played phenomenally well. I'm telling you, there is no way on planet Earth that Steve Stricker does not get in the mix this week.
I don't know why I keep looking back there for a sign of, or you always see.
I'm okay. I am well today. I
give you credit for doing shows back to back, but maybe there's some repercussions. Steve Stricker lock button. This could be you're pushing the limit because you were on fire with your hot take last week, and this would be push it to the limit in the Scarface montage. For anyone that knows what I'm talking about, that's one of the best scenes in that movie.
And I understand it's high variance, and I understand it's a 50-plus-year-old, but you do not understand. This golf course is basically 125 in it. It's 150 in it.
Said.
It is all of these things. And he is still, as a 50-plus-year-old, he is still at the height of his powers at doing those things specifically well. It is a golf course he obviously has unbelievable vibes with. He's playing well. The form is immaculate. He just went and played well at a golf tournament that we generally put a lot of stock in. Firestone is definitely a place that you don't go out and just dominate everybody here in this spot. He played Firestone 2 weeks ago, is where he ended up winning that senior tour event. RIP, I missed that golf course so much. It was awesome. Yeah. But I absolutely love Steve Stricker. I was very disappointed to see what his ownership was at. And so I just basically said, you know what? I'm happy losing every single dollar if Steve Stricker doesn't play well.
I totally disagree with everything you said about Steve Stricker, but I absolutely love the logic because I am lockstep with what you're saying. Sometimes when a guy is popular, what happens is people say, oh my God, I loved him and he's popular, I can't play him. No, the move then, if you really like him, is to just push your chips into the middle. And if Steve Stricker plays bad this week, you would be the first to say that you shouldn't have a good week because that's how you feel so strongly. And if he plays great, you're going to be in a great position to get paid off. And that is absolutely
by Awesemo.com because I'll get a raise, right?
That's right. But next week, we could have a whole new crew doing this show if Stricker and Kyle Stanley are slamming the trunk on Friday. So we're going to see what we can do here. I like this, though. That is way to take a stand. I respect that, and so does chat. Moving down, Ches Reavie, Henrik Norlander, Scott Piercy, who was absolutely abysmal last week. Is there anything in the lower sevens that kind of catches your eye?
Not really. And I think that that's kind of a product of why I'm so heavy on Hostler and Stricker in this range. It's a lot of the lower 9Ks that we've talked about and a lot of the upper 7Ks. Pat Perez, I like, and we haven't talked about him, but like for the most part, this mid sevens, I mean, JT Poston, a weaker Eric Lindquist would be very overweight to JT Poston in this spot, especially because he's actually grading out pretty decently for Alex. That's always something I try to do. So check out the PGA Pro plays. And, you know, I still got to upload mine here at this point in time, but I absolutely love being able to look and see the exposures that you and Jason and Alex and Steve Buzzard and all the top players in the industry are going to have in these massive contests, because there's a lot of money to be won this week. And, you know, JT Poston, just not a guy that I probably was going to land on a bunch this week. Seeing he graded out all right there allowed me to play 10% and actually feel okay about it.
No doubt about it. And yeah, just to echo that, we have such a good team and a lot of guys that you see on the shows and a lot of guys you don't like. Steve Buzzard, just to give him a quick shout out, one of the best DFS players in the world, the Colts, as most people know it as just a great member of the team here, does a ton of stuff. But yeah, this is a range. I'm with you, even though I don't have that, say, linchpin in the middle. I'll probably spread with Stricker and Straka, and certainly, as I talked about, Kyle Stanley. I don't really like this lower 7K range. I think Norlander's my favorite of the bunch. When I look at him, he's quietly playing pretty good. He's made 3 straight cuts, 3 straight where he gained off the tee and with the approach. The around the green game is weak, but I think around a place like this, if you're scrambling a lot, you're already in trouble because you should be peppering these greens.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have nothing to add. That's fantastic. It's literally it. It's a range, though. Again, if you're making tournament lineups, there are targets in here. It's just I don't see anything for cash. I don't see anything to consolidate my ownership. Don't mind hanging on with Piercy. You've got like the Luke Lists of the world and it's weak though. No.
Yeah, T Dunks, man. pretty thin, but let's keep working down. We got about 10 minutes left. We're gonna talk about some cheapies, and then shows don't end. The reason we're going a little earlier is we got something special for you guys tonight, a mock draft. The NFL, our man Laffy, Matt Gajeski, they are going to be making some magic on the NFL streets. Never too early to start doing that. That is a show you do not want to miss. But as we work down, this is just some flyer names, and then I will open it up to you. We've got guys like Satoshi, CT Pan, Jim Herman. They're all around flat 7. I'll be honest, I don't have a ton of interest in those guys. I think CT Pan is a deep flyer. Does you see anything there, and do you want to kick off the 6K range?
This is where I'm kind of torn, because I feel like there's going to be a couple guys that pop out of this range. Like I don't know how you can possibly gauge whether it's going to be Vaughn Taylor, whether it's going to be Harry Higgs, whether it's going to be, Kadira sitting there at 7K. I mean, how do you even start parsing between some of these dudes? I'm kind of doing a little bit of scattershot. Obviously, one of my lineup spots is kind of made up for me, so I don't have to think about it. I'm able to take a little bit more of a scattershot approach. I'm obviously going to be very heavy on Seamus, obviously going to be very heavy on Alex Noren. So maybe I do get a little bit overweight on a couple of these guys. I just don't know who I want them to be yet. It feels like maybe Adam Schenk is an all right spot to be going to. I mean, the 41st at the Rocket Mortgage is fine. Nothing really particular about it, but didn't really have a ton of form coming into that. I'm just having a tough time getting to somebody where I'm going to have a meaningful amount of exposure to him. Do you see it any differently?
No, not really. Schenk, I think, is probably the most likely to make the cut down here, but I also think that he's also very likely to give you a T48. And that's not exactly getting it done. I do have some, and again, tempered interest. The good thing about the 6K range is there's no ownership whatsoever. You don't need 30% of these guys. You can take 10%. You're going to get leverage. Benny On, who is really struggled. He has not gained strokes putting in 6 months since January. That's really a problem. The ball striking is coming back. The around the green game is really randomly flipped, but I do think he's good enough to make the weekend. And we've seen him around that price in stronger fields than this, but I am with you. It's pretty bad. And
I do not want Benny On. I want that on the record. I want 0% Benny On. But I think you are one of the sharpest minds in the world, so maybe I should reevaluate it, but I'm still going to have 0%.
Let's not hitch my wagons to Benny On. I think he's good for possibly a make cut. He's got to flip the putter for any placement points. I'll tell you that.
Can't you just get plus money on him making the cut here? It's got to be close.
It's got to be pretty close. Yeah. A couple of names that I do want to throw out, though, as we get into the lower ranges. And it's crazy. I'd say normally, chat, you guys are nuts, but Wes Roach is making cuts. I've got to admit that JJ Spawn is a name that I looked at and I feel pretty comfortable with. If I'm in a jam, say I want to go Berger and Cam Davis or something, and I need a cheapie, I think you could do worse than those two guys in the mid 6s.
Yeah, I think they're fine. JJ Spawn. Any JJ Spawn stuff as well? I mean, did you just bring him up?
I did, but that's
God. I'm just the worst here at this point in time. I was basically kind of looking. The main reason I bring him up is Max brought him up last week out of the middle of I truly say out of the middle of nowhere.
Truly
and so
nowhere. Yep.
Yeah, truly from the ether world or whatever. I don't really know. So yeah, JJ Spawn, love it. I'm on board with you there. I thought I heard that name on the front end of it. Just wanted to double check.
No, subliminally. I got you there. We got Streb. I would love to go there. He's doing it all with the putter. It's not terrible. He's made 4 or 5 cuts. I think it's more a product of, do I really need to play these guys? And unless the answer to that is yes, because I'm jamming, I will try to land at a little higher range and maybe reduce that miscut equity.
Yeah, I just don't see a crazy case. Again, I'm saying I'm full-heartedly accepting that there's going to be 1 or 2 guys that pop out of this range that finish top 15, top 10, and that could definitely work out optimally for you. In some of these large field tournaments, those are fine stands to be making. I just don't know who that's going to be. If I took a shot on anybody, not to be a complete homer, but Chris Baker sitting down there. Birdie Maker Baker at this point in time played like absolute garbage on the weekend again at the Rocket Mortgage, but made the cut. That's more than Bryson DeChambeau did. Made the cut at the U.S. Open. There's some obvious form there. Also, Iowa State, 2.5 hours away, just from the Quad Cities there. So there is that. He's definitely played that golf course a bunch because I've played it with him, I believe, back in college days. So Yeah, I got to think that that's not the worst spot for him. He'll have a little bit of a home contingency coming from Illinois or from Indiana, excuse me. So a little bit further away from the Rock Island, from the Illinois border there with Iowa. But he'll definitely have family and friends there. He might pop a little bit. I'll have some exposure, but I do that every week because I'm just a homer.
Like I said, when you get down here, you don't need a lot. You're looking for guys that are going to outscore their placement and make a cut. I don't see a ton of difference between most of the names. I'd say the number one rule is really try to pick a couple, having 10, 15, depending on how many lines, of course, but I don't think there's a need to really spread down here with a bunch of different golfers. It seems unnecessary. I do want to give one last guy though, and then we can get into hot takes. There is a guy, and I know nothing about him, but I did some research today because people brought up Alex Smalley, and he's flat 6K. This is a guy that, is not on the tour, but when he's gotten some starts here and there, he's looked pretty good. Seems to be just as good as most of this 6K range, and he is the flat min. So again, would I play him just to play him? Absolutely not. If I have a lineup where I actually need that, I'm going to take a stab with a couple shares of Alex Smalley and hope that he just makes the weekend.
Yeah. Wow. Nothing to add there.
No,
played in the Corrales twice. I mean, there's
come
that.
on now. But being serious, this is not that much different than that type of field.
No. I'm not making fun of it by any means. It's more of just like,
no, you should. The Corrales is an absolute creative player fest. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's just I don't really know what to say other than this is the John Deere Classic. This is not the golf tournament we deserve at this point in time. But you know what? It's going to make next week so much sweeter.
Yeah, I mean, next week is going to be absolutely fantastic. And I do want to quickly say, again, we're going to have you covered from the tools, from the ownership projections, the pro golfers tool, the top golfers, all the things that Alex and the team provide. It's going to make a difference when you're playing these weeks like this and weeks like next week. So if you're saying, you know what, I like this, but I haven't really signed up, give it a week. Come on in and see what it's about for the British Open. And again, then, you know what, maybe decide to take a break and you sign up next year. We hope you'll stick around, but there's no reason to not at least try it. We've got weekly passes. Just go to awesemo.com/join and see what we're about. You get in our Slack chat. That's worth its weight in gold. The entertainment value, we get Eric betting horses in there. It doesn't get any better than that.
It gets better for me. I don't win anything.
In the flesh.
You crushed.
A week from today. I cannot wait. I will be at the track. If any of you non-crazy people are at the track, let me know. But we got a couple minutes left. Let's move to our favorite. I mean, I would say I wonder where you're going for your hot takes. But my man, I think you've already said it. You're going with Steve Stricker. Let me just ask you this, because I totally, you've already made it your stance. One of the good things about Steve Stricker is he makes a lot of cuts. He's a very safe play. Where do you think, I mean, I know it's golf and anything can happen, but what is your target per se? Like, are you taking like a top 10 finish? Are you looking in that? I mean, obviously he's not an erratic player. Is that 10 to T15 range kind of where you hope he lands realistically?
That's acceptable. That's acceptable. My thing is that out of the course of his career, every time he goes here and into your late 40s, past what most people would consider being your prime, he has competed, and not just competed, he has throttled some of the, like he's put his foot down at this event multiple times. And so I feel like, yes, if you're looking at like a median outcome where 10th to 15th is probably going to be the scattershot event that I'm thinking happens more frequently. But I just think at the upper 7K range at a golf tournament where I'm trying to not just make it interesting for myself, but I just think that there is such I would just be very remiss to just be slightly overweight to him here, not really get that big of an edge on the field for a guy that I just think can come over. I think there's such win equity with him that is not being understated. Like I'm trying to figure out the right way of putting this. I just believe in his ability to top 5 here at a higher clip than anybody else does. And I think because of that, I feel like it's just an all-in spot where, again, I don't think I'm going to get burned that many times out of 100 playing this golf tournament. And so why wouldn't I just say, you know what, this isn't a spot where many people are going to find a crazy amount of leverage with him anyway. They're going to roster him because he's 20% owned. And, it's Steve Stricker, great course history, but he's old and whatever else. I'm just jamming it because I think that there is an unspoken amount of win equity that exists. And at that point in time, top 5, top 10, yeah, that's also a fantastic event for me, considering he's underneath 8K. But 10th to 15th, that's going to go a long way in this golf tournament as well.
No, absolutely. Like I said, there's two different things with golf and with any DFS sport. It's the play itself, but then it's justifying it. And like I said, I'm not nearly as high on Stricker as you are, but I absolutely am in lockstep with how you're justifying that. And I can get down with that. My hot take is nothing crazy. I just went to the betting markets, and one number that stood out for me was Henrik Norlander's top 10. There's an 11-1 out there. I think that's too generous. This is a guy that, again, tee to green, he's been fine. We've seen him pop at opportunities. This is nothing that you're running to the window. But if you're making a card, 11-1 on a guy like that in a weak field, I think is a pretty generous number. I see 7-1, 8-1. When you see a lot of books in there and then you see an 11-1, that's one to kind of take notice at. So looking at that, I think that's where I land. The greatest way to end a show. Any love for T-Dunks? I played him last week and he was fine. I don't know if we need to go back to Tyler Duncan, but I respect Tyler Duncan. I respect this field. Mr. Lindquist, we did it. We did the John Deere. Any parting words for the great people that are watching this show?
Yeah, if it's not Steve Stricker, I hope it's Seamus Power at 35-1. That will be my one bet that I will include here. I had a number of books. You can find it. He was down a little bit further, around 30, 33. It's moved up to 35 at a number of places. Definitely be locking that number in, because I think this could be a Seamus week. This is definitely going to be a Steve Stricker week. So look forward to seeing you guys in either gloating and just absolutely loving it, or eating crow on Wednesday.
Well said. On that note, we are going to bounce on out of here. Please, guys, hit that like button on your way out. We really appreciate you guys watching and bearing with us while this time change occurs here and there, but it's for a good reason. As I said, our man Lofty and our man Matt Gajeski are about to go live in just a couple minutes, breaking down all things NFL and doing the first of many mock drafts at Awesemo.com. So go give them some love. Give us some love on Twitter. Appreciate you guys. Good luck at the John Deere. We'll see you next week for the last major of the season.